Hey, gals, guys, and otherwise, I'm Jonathan O. Roselion, aka Polyphonic.
and I am Noah, no last name, aka Make Stuff.
Yeah, swapping lives. This week we're talking about issue number 6. Yeah, this episode is just a summary. It's just a series of rad-ass spaceships, just one after the other, a bunch of rad-ass spaceships.
That was going to be one of the themes that I wanted to talk about in this.
Well, then let's get into it.
Before we get into the story, we should discuss, which I don't know if you remember last week, you mentioned how much you loved this cover and that you had forgotten it existed. And I think I felt the same. I think the lack of a character on the cover, like you're so used to these bold character shots, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's such a beautiful cover. Can you describe to our listeners what the cover is?
Yeah. So it is. I like how you're like, it's bold and beautiful. Now put it into words.
Yeah.
So it's a rare, just like black space shot, because usually we get some color in there, but it's black space, and we have the planet, a distant planet, and then a trail coming from the planet of leaves and dew, and it's almost like an airstream, but it's just this row of leaves, and then we get right in front just a nice big close-up of one of the leaves, and it is absolutely gorgeous. And seeing that like dew in zero gravity, and so, you know, that seems like foreshadowing a bit, but it is so specific to this comic. Like, you cannot get this imagery anywhere else, and it's such a brilliant detail. And I'm going to be getting into a lot of just brilliant little details in this issue, because this one is fucking packed with them.
All right, I think that sums it up well.
I think it does.
So whose turn whose turn is it to summarize this first scene?
I'll start us off a bit. We start out with some more Hazel narration. Once upon a time, each of us was somebody's kid, and we get a big splash of Marco and Alana and Hazel walking away from their ship. Alana's looking at their map, and they're about to find the Rocketship Garden, and they turn the corner.
Rocketship Forest, you asshat.
You know what? Hey,
Jesus.
I'm taking some fucking liberties on this. And they turn the corner, and it's burnt down. They've burned down the beautiful Rocketship Garden that I refuse to call anything else now. And Isabel wakes up because it is evening and she can only be out at night, and says, "Evening, boss, what I miss?" And they're very disappointed that the Rocketship Forest is burnt down. And Isabel says, "You dummies. This is another illusion. You think we're not going to hold on
Michael.
to some? Think we're not going to hold on to some illusions?" And we get the reveal, which is one of the best reveals in this whole book.
Oh my god, I know.
We turn the page to a double page splash that is vertical. So you have to turn the book 90 degrees to see
landscape.
Yeah, to see the height of this.
Or I guess it's
skyscape.
Well, I'm confused because like. This is messing with me. Is it because it's kind of like, usually I guess a 2-page splash is landscape, and I guess what's different about this one is that it's portrait.
Yeah. So yeah, it's portrait, and it is of the massive rocket ship made of trees. It is a wooden rocket ship. And Isabel says, "I would have killed for a treehouse when I was a kid." And it is, is that the end of the scene? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So we can talk about this because it is fucking awesome. I love this.
Everything about the design of the ship is so brilliant. It's so organic. The Celtic knots on the door.
Yeah. And this shot is, I'm just going to say, like, our generation's binary sunset from Star Wars. Like, we have the 2 moons in the background, which matches up with that cover that was a planet with 2 moons. So that is this planet. And it is just so, you don't get this kind of spectacle very often in comics. You don't get this sense of just massiveness. And
yeah, it really feels like it's towering over you.
Yeah, and so that turning the page is so fucking smart. And so we finally get that big payoff of the rocket ship tree.
Do we want to? I think I'm going to save this for later in the episode, but I want to have like a whole discussion on spaceship design in Saga. This could be a whole episode.
Oh yeah.
In and of itself. But going back, smaller details in the scene that I love. I love the dynamic action of Isabel waking up out of Hazel's chest and like stretching her arms, and the way it kind of like you see these red ribbons swirling leading up to her, and you can just kind of feel it all. It almost feels like the genie coming out of the lamp in that Will Smith movie. Or
yeah. Return of Jafar.
Yes. No, but you totally feel the action of it, which is I love.
Yeah, it is everything with Isabel and the illusions and stuff are so gorgeously rendered, and I love it to death. And then also we get some very solid the voiceover going throughout this scene. Hazel's voiceover that started with the "Once upon a time each of us was somebody's kid." I just want to read some of it because it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Everyone had a father, even if they never provided anything more than his seed. Everyone had a mother, even if she had to leave us on a stranger's doorstep. No matter how we're eventually raised, all of our stories begin the exact same way, and they all end the same too, is what we hear when we see the burned down forest.
And I think that also calls back to where we just left off the previous issue with a major death, right?
Yeah, that is very much, again, it feels like every portion of voiceover is just the whole comic in a nutshell.
Yeah.
Every time. It's always very, very profound. And we're going to get probably my favorite line of voiceover apart from the first line in the first book, this is how an idea becomes real. There's one that's just straight up poetry coming up in this book, and I'm pumped to get to that. But yeah, do we want to hit up this next scene?
Yeah, I think it's time to hit up the next scene and return to the rocket ship tree later.
Yeah.
So in the next scene, we cut to pretty much the moment, well, actually the exact moment we left off last issue, with Prince Robot having just shot the stock and seeming pretty pissed off about the way that he lost his cool. He realized that he created a mess. And then
really quick, sorry, specifically, what does he say to show that he's pissed off? Because I love it.
It's super nuanced. You might not pick this up. He says, "Bloody fucking blood fuck."
So posh, so royal.
And in case you forgot, the Stalk was on the phone with the Will on her little egg phone. And the Will realizes that she's been killed, and because Prince Robot the Fourth picks up the phone and basically says, "I killed her. I'm taking her shit. Deal with it." And the Will says, "I'm gonna kill you and everyone you've ever loved."
Hey, I believe him. Looking at that face, I believe it.
And then we just get him kind of a whole page of him being sad as the news that his ex-girlfriend died sinks in.
Yeah, which we'll get to that page because it's gorgeous.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out here, good old everyone's favorite little schemer, little rascal, Lance Corporal McHenry, says, It was a good shot, Your Majesty. That freelancer drew down on you first. I'll back you up in the after action 100%. Hey, guess what, guys? Lance Corporal McHenry is a war criminal that is willing to lie in court about
oath.
The unjust murder of another spider human. And
Lance
again,
Corporal Littlefinger.
Get that trending, please. Oh my gosh. I'm telling you, everything that happens in this book, she is the first domino of everything. But yeah, so we have that, and then also there's a great little shot of her in the background pulling the car keys, the ship keys from the Stalk's corpse, and they have like a little fuzzy thing on them.
I think this scene is like a really like jarring shift of like emotion and comedy, because also like the kind of joke of the Will like pouring his heart out, and Prince Robot the Fourth picks it up, and to the Will like pouring his heart out and saying maybe we could get back together, and you know, and then he's like, the hell is this?
Yeah, it's and I like, of course, Robot is, I think this is a good clashing of personality types. Robot's being very snooty and posh and formal about the whole thing. I'm sorry to be the bearer of unfortunate news, but your client violated protocol and was justly killed in action. Is his first line to him.
Well, also, are you this creature's representative? Which also just speaks to what we see a little bit like agents for freelancers.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Prince Robot is just like, it's coldly bureaucratic.
And then the Will says, "Listen to my voice, boy," and I love he calls him boy again. The badass facade is kicking in majorly because he doesn't know how to cope with this. And then the Will hangs up, and Prince Robot says, "Good Lord, psychotics, the lot of them."
Yeah,
the most. But yeah, this final page, it's just four panels.
I also want to talk a bit more about this scene, because I think this is a very interesting kind of character interaction. Again, this is as we kind of started to see last issue, some of the characters that we've been introduced to, our main characters, their paths are starting to cross. And I think this is a really interesting moment, because this is kind of the first interaction between any of our different perspective characters, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting pair to do it with, because both Robot and the Will are characters that we feel empathy for, but we also aren't really sure where to place them, whether they're heroes or villains, or like really what's going on. Both of them have had a lot of character growth to this point, but neither of them are like, you're not rooting for them in the same way you're rooting for Marco and Alana. So it's super interesting to see these two characters that you empathize with cross paths on opposite sides, right? And I think that's part of what makes Game of Thrones, to take a modern example, so interesting, is being empathetic to people on both sides of a direct conflict.
Yeah, and like it reminds me of like back when, because I'm not the biggest fan of the last season of Game of Thrones, but I remember in season 7 we had that Jaime versus Daenerys battle, and I was just so tense the whole time, because it's like, oh shit, I love both these people, and we get that a lot this series, and it doesn't always end the best. So. And
this is the first inkling of this, and I think that this is a big moment, because the story, I mean, it's the end of it's the end of an arc, but you also get the sense that the wider story is just kind of starting to amp up, right? I think almost fittingly, to use a TV analogy, this is kind of toward the end of season 1, where paths are starting to cross in ways that will set the plot in motion.
Yeah. And then we get this final page of the Will's reaction.
Devastating. Fucking devastating.
It's him looking straight at us, and he's sort of blank faced a bit, like he's processing things, and then another panel of him putting his hand on his head, and then another panel of him putting his head in his hands and just sort of hunched over, and the Lion Cat just looking at him, sort of not knowing what to do. I'm guessing she hasn't really seen him like this before. And then this gorgeous shot of just purple space, a lot of negative space here, and his onion ship, which I should point out has propellers, which is the best, because it's a spaceship. Again, a series of fucking awesome rad ass ships. But just his ship just floating through empty space, which is very beautiful. And again, there's a lot of that. We have a big negative space in the third panel too, where his head is in his hands, and it's a very good way of
presumably like the wall that you're seeing from behind. But it's really interesting, and I love the acting. I mean, I like the acting by the Will here. But in case you missed, we've established acting as how we're going to describe Fiona Staples drawing characters. But the acting that I love in this scene is Lion Cat.
Yeah.
Like, I just think it's such an authentic feeling, like an animal that empathizes with a human but doesn't really understand fully what's going on. Like I think in that third panel, that's exactly what Lion Cat looks like. Like when a cat or a dog knows their owner is unhappy but doesn't really understand the world, right?
Yeah, which is always like Fiona Staples does such a good job of incorporating because there's so many animal-based humanoids in this and like sentient species in this that are just animals on human bodies pretty much, and it's always so cool to see how she takes the recognizable facial expressions of those different animals, or like just posture and stuff like that, and incorporating that into them being way smarter than that, or them being alien, and it really grounds everything in such a cool way. But yeah, this is a fucking good page. This is a good fucking page.
Yeah
this page right here,
it's a good page.
This page, the one we just talked about, it's a good fucking page. Hey, what's the next page? Actually, that's my job, isn't it?
Yeah. You almost had a great transition, but but our undefined rules of handing off alternating summaries have ruined it.
Our age old tradition. So yeah, we cut back to, and again we have that color match of purple to purple transitioning between the scenes. We cut back to the rocket ship forest, garden, and they Isabel tells them that they can't get in and they can't blast off without making a sacrifice first. And Marco's like, oh yeah, that's easy. I'm just going to get rid of my sword. And Alana's like, first of all, that sword is the thing that just saved our lives. And second of all, it's been in your family for 1,000 generations. And he's like, it's still just a thing. And so he breaks it over his knee, and all this blue light comes out of it, like it's enchanted in some way. And those Celtic knots sort of unwind and open up to let them in. And the inside of this place is amazing. It's like a Japanese garden sort of thing, I guess. Like it's
but more mushrooms.
Yeah, and it's so cool. It's all bioluminescence and wood flooring, wood panels, and green. Like I want to live here so badly. Again, this comic is a series of ships I want to live in.
Yeah. And one ship you do live in, the interior of the Onion ship.
With my topless Fruit Loops eating. And then they realize that it's starting to take off, and Alana says, who's steering this thing? And Isabel says, dude, you don't steer a rocket ship, you ride it. And we get this gorgeous shot.
Such a good line.
Of like this green fire shooting out of the bottom of it as it's taking off into the sky. And she said you can ride it anywhere, and they've been so busy running away that they haven't considered a destination. And Alana suggests Quietus. Marco says, the old lighthouse planet? Why? Lana says, you're the one who said it's never too early to start thinking about a kid's education, right? I want our daughter to meet the smartest person in the universe, Brian K. Vaughan, which I always thought was a little self-indulgent. But I get, like, he's worked this hard on this thing. Yeah. Like, might as well have a little shout out to himself. So they're going to go see Brian K. Vaughan on Quietus. And that's how it goes down. Is that the end of the scene? Yeah.
Yeah. I think just the million little things, the the Marco saying, "Come on, let's check out her insides," and Isabel saying, "Whoa, not so fast, horn dog."
I love it. Yeah, and even like I love when people get comedic timing down in a comic book, which is so hard to do. But there's just this little exchange between Isabel and Alana. Isabel says, "So noble." She says, "Yeah." And he says, "You're not ditching your ray gun, are you?" And she says, "Not a fucking chance," after he breaks the sword. Which again perfectly highlights their dynamic. But yeah, it is such a I love these, like, again, this comic has just everything. It's never just sadness, it's never death and drama. Like, I love these sort of like Harry Potter seeing Diagon Alley for the first time kind of spectacle, like wonder and awe scenes of just seeing the inside of this spaceship and the size of it, and just it just feels magical. And I love it.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, just the world building of, like, the lore around the rocket ship tree, the, like, oh, you need to sacrifice something to get inside, and then it opens, and it just, there's so much implied world building, right? There's so much of a world beneath here that you're never gonna see, and it would be ruined if there was a Wikipedia where you could read 20,000 words on on how the rocket ship tree functions. It's like, no.
You know what? I'm not gonna lie though. Do you remember those old Star Wars books that were like ships cut in half and you see all the nonsense mechanical? Yeah. I would die for one of those with Saga. But
I also love I agree. I would die for one of those with Saga. But this is the thing, and this is one of the things I think about Saga, is that there are so many things that I want to know more about that if I had a definitive answer on, I would be disappointed in. I want to know more about how the robots work. If I had a definitive answer, that would ruin them for me.
Yeah, I mean, again, like with Star Wars, it's like the midichlorians thing, where it's just like there are things that you do not want to explain because then you get plot holes and then you get nonsense. And
my go-to, actually, like my go-to line for that in Star Wars is actually in the original series when Obi-Wan says, "I fought alongside your father in the Clone Wars." That implies something so much cooler than Attack of the Clones.
I love how that line dictated the prequels.
Yeah, exactly.
Which and again, you can get some cool sort of like, because we'll have flashbacks in this series. I think we already have, and like actually that's something that reminds me a lot of, again, Adventure Time with the world building, where it's always I love learning more about like the world because there is just thoroughly so much unexplained, and it is, as you learn more about it's always satisfying, but still by the end of that series you have no idea what the hell's going on.
And this is the thing that I love about both Saga and Adventure Time, is when they teach you, when they give you an answer to a world, that answer asks 10 more questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I think that's what I really love about Saga's world building, is it doesn't seem like the world gains depth when you answer questions, because each of these questions has questions behind them.
Yeah. And getting into world building, this next scene, there are 3 parts of this next scene that, like, I feel like just define what I love so much about Saga in the world building.
I also just quickly want to say, to ruin that beautiful, perfect transition, I just love the way that you can picture the, like, knots retracting as the door opens.
Yeah, in one panel. Too.
Yeah, like it feels like something out of Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah,
like,
totally.
Like you can even imagine like the sound design of like the snaking roots retracting.
Yeah.
But anyways,
it's cool.
To go back to your really smooth transition that I just fucked up royally. So this next scene, we cut back.
What? We don't even need a smooth transition. We have so this next scene, we're good to go.
We cut to Prince Robot, commandeering. Stealing?
Sure.
The Stalk's ship which he unlocks with keys like a fucking car, which is hilarious.
Badoop.
And as he's kind of in this ship and hacking into it with creepy wire fingers, we get a call from everyone's favorite fucking guy who lives in the bad place, Special Agent Gale.
This shit stain.
Yeah. And Special Agent Gale is basically expositing a little. He basically says, what's the deal with you killing a freelancer? And then we find out a bit more about kind of the things going on in the bigger picture, where we learn that both Landfall and Wreath, well, we know, but Prince Robot and Special Agent Gale learn that both Landfall and Wreath are looking for Halo. And Prince Robot kind of says, yeah, Marco's fucking terrifying, but the mother is who really scares me. And as he says this, he pulls out this book, A Nighttime Smoke, which is, of course, the book that they fall in love with. And he looks at the author's photo, and the author's photo says that he lives on Quietus. And Prince Robot realizes, all right, I'm going to go to Quietus because that's probably where they've gone. And we realize this with Quietus being written in reflection on his screen, which is fucking awesome.
Looks so cool. So the three things that really just like cement the brilliance of this book for me. First one's a little obvious, and that's the fact that the Stalk's ship is a fucking skull. It's a massive monster skull with big old like tusk fangs. It looks like the giant, like a dragon head or something, and the mouth opens up, and that's like the boarding ramp into it, and like the cockpit is in like the eyes and like brain cavity, and it's just the coolest thing. Like it
definitely feels like this universe's equivalent of like a Lamborghini.
Yeah. Or like, you see like someone will have like a skull shaped like shifter on a car, and it's like, but if that was the whole car, it is fucking rad as hell. And again, like, I think that is just like it being on the surface, like, this is, out of all the ideas you could have picked, this is the fucking coolest. Well, and I appreciate it.
And not just is it shaped like this, like it looks like it's made of organic material, which is a really interesting thing I love about the ships.
It looks like it's made out of bone.
But yeah, that's its whole own tangent. But yeah, it looks like it's like bone with kind of an interior put inside of the bone, not like it's just built to look like a bone.
Yeah, which again is that world building thing of like, how many questions does this raise of like, oh shit, I want to know the story of how the Stalk got us, like, knowing the Stalk, she probably murdered this thing and then put a spaceship in its skull. And again, it's just like you're going off on your own adventures in your head with one single image. And again, I think that is a perfect example of like, maybe don't explain it, because like what your imagination fills in is already fucking great.
And also, I know I mentioned this in the summary, but I can't get over how good this moment is where he uses the keys with the badoop. Like the visual comedy of this big fucking crazy skull ship doing a little boop boop, like as you as you unlock it, like your Honda Civic does.
It's so good. The second thing I want to point out, and it's the next two are just them going an extra step that I feel like so much world building never goes. And I think it's hard to do when you're building an entire world, to not do the obvious thing and just think about a detail just long enough to really figure out how it functions or how it works in this world. The first one is just the fact that it's red lighting. It's a dull orangish red light in the spaceship, and that is the same color as the sort of visor, like glass on the outside of the spaceship.
Yeah.
So that it is that color because that is what the light becomes when it goes through that glass. And just that tiny little detail of like, oh, of course, the lighting in this room is going to be this way because we colored these windows a certain way. And it's something that is, you know, obviously effortless in like, in if you're filming live action, but it's something that's so often looked over with comics and stuff like that, or just writing in general, where you just don't make that connection of like, oh, of course the light is going to act a certain way when in these certain environments. And so the fact that that was just thought of at all, of just like, oh, well, we put this cool, like, obviously we're going to put a cool, like, orangey visor on this skull ship, and that's one thing, but to see how that affects the light is just such an interesting little detail for me. And then the last one, which is my fucking favorite thing, is the writer's bio, the author's bio.
Yes.
In the thing, it says D. Oswald Heiss is the Lauper nominated author of over 40 novels. He resides on Quietus. Do you think Lauper or Loper or Looper? I'm gonna go with Lauper, but just the fact that he's Lauper nominated, and that is the level of accolade that he's received.
Well, and the fact that it says Lauper nominated 40 novels, like it's also the humor of it all. Like this is like this little panel is itself a mini satire of just like self-aggrandizing author bios.
Yeah, and the fact that like. I love that juxtaposition of like Alana says we're gonna go see the smartest man in the universe, and he's written over 40 novels and his highest accolade is Lauper nominated.
Yeah.
And I love the depth and the sort of like, if you pay attention just enough, and again, it's just it's adding so much to, like, I feel like so many first choices would be like, oh, I came up with the Lauper Award, that's all the brain work I'm gonna do, so he got the Lauper Award and I just wrote that in there. But the fact that they went that extra step and made it Lauper nominated, that actually says something about the character and the world.
And that's what I think is brilliant about it, is I think you can easily miss that detail and not worry about it, but also like part of that primes your mind to be like, this guy writes pulp, right? Like to be like like they're reading this as like utterly brilliant, but even his bio kind of suggests he writes pulp, kind of suggests like like he just put stuff out, and every now and then something got nominated for, and I mean, in my mind, maybe this is just my headcanon, the Lauper is like, the Lauper isn't like the Booker. The Lauper is just like one of these like random obscure
random
genre fiction. But not even like the Hugo or something, like just some random like
I'm really sorry to interrupt you, but I literally just got the email saying we have been nominated for the Lauper.
Oh, we've been nominated for the Lauper?
Yeah.
Oh.
Which everyone says is like the most prestigious award, and no one would say otherwise. And so actually it says here, if you want to vote for us, you listener, if you want to vote for us, just head to patreon.com/MixedUpStudios. Go ahead and sign up for an account, and I'm sure there'll be a link on there to go vote for us in the Laupers.
Us winning the Lauper is kind of like akin to Kendrick winning the Pulitzer. It'll be us pushing people's idea of the legitimacy of podcasts into the mainstream.
The Lauper is actually an award for the most needless shit. The most unnecessary thing to exist.
Can we update our social bios to be like Lauper nominated podcast?
I was just thinking that we need to do that on the anchor page. So keep an eye out for that.
And our intro needs to be welcome to the Lauper nominated podcast, Horns and Wings.
I love it. We're building out that universe, baby.
So anyways,
that's a fun scene, and there's a lot of good world building.
What's happening after?
So this next scene there's my transition. So we get this green streak through space, and we zoom in on it a bit and realize it's the rocket ship forest. What do we want to call this thing? The tree rocket ship?
The rocket ship tree.
Ship?
The rocket ship tree. That's
the rocket ship tree.
That's what it's called. Do they not
specifically
Do they not
tree?
explicitly say that?
I feel like it's called like the rocket ship or something.
No, it's called the Rocketship tree. If they don't,
Okay.
I will be shocked if they don't explicitly say that, because I'm like so confident of that in my mind.
Actually, they're not allowed to call it that because Shel Silverstein already has the copyright on the rocket ship tree. So yeah, we zoom in on it and we get again this amazing Hazel voiceover. She says, "So yeah, this is where I grew up," with an arrow pointing at the rocket ship tree. And then I fucking love this line.
Oh my god, I know.
"Most of my childhood was spent clinging to the feathers of a dulled arrow blindly fired across a starless night," which is just poetry now.
Yeah.
And she says it was heaven for a while anyway. And it's we get Marco showing her space for the first time out the window. So I'm trying to figure out I think it's brought up later how Isabel, or I think they just shrug it off, how Isabel, like she can only be out at night, but is it ever night?
Yeah,
or day in space?
they shrug it off when they introduce her and they introduce the powers.
Right. So she's still hanging around. And then Alana gets out of a shower and she's about to make a joke about wanting to make love with the shower, but she can't because she just had a child. And in the middle of the joke, the lighting just turns blue from orange. Isabel says it's reverse photosynthesis, and that's how the rocket ships communicate. Not rocket ship tree, just rocket ship. And she says we've got magic incoming, and Marco realizes, oh shit, his sword. And Alana and Isabel have no idea what is happening. And then two horned folk teleport onto the ship, in which actually I'm just realizing in the same way that the people in the first issue teleport surrounded by fire. And they say something in blue language, Esperanto, and immediately it's a male and female. Immediately the male one shoots lightning out of his hand and hits Isabel, which she just starts out holy fuh and is cut off by exploding into blood.
Jesus.
Alana fires the heartbreaker at the woman, and the guy's coming at them with an axe, and then Marco yells something in blue, and the guy who is coming at them with an axe recognizes him. Alana speaks for all of us by saying, "What the fuck is going on?" So Marco holds up his baby and says, "Tio estas nia bebo," which I'm pretty sure bebo is I'm drunk in Spanish, but this is Esperanto. And then both people take off their helmets, and we see that they're older. And then we get the this final splash, and it is them staring right at us. And the voiceover says, "And then my grandparents came to live with us." So we have the introduction of Marco's parents storming the ship because they were alarmed by him breaking the sword. It acted as a beacon. They teleport onto the ship and realize that he has a family now, and it's fucking weird. And that is the end of the first arc.
I think.
Holy shit!
I think this has been a really tight episode so far, but I hope you're ready to get comfortable, because I have a lot of thoughts on this scene.
Oh boy! Well, really quick. I translated some of this. The speech bubbles here. They're called word balloons. I'm using old language. Do you want to hear? There are a couple significant ones.
Yeah.
Literally two that I have retained. The first one, so if you speak Esperanto, it is pretty apparent what's happening in that first panel where they warp in there, because the mother cries out, "Kie?" Sure. "Estas mia nabo." And that translates to, "Where is my boy?" So now I read it with like a Daniel Plainview, "There will be blood" voice, because that sounds like a very and so that's how I'm going to be reading that aloud in the podcast from now on for her voiceovers.
Yeah. I want to hear your Daniel Plainview. Don't just say it. Show, don't tell.
How's he sound? "I'm an oil man." Is that it? "I've abandoned my boy." He's great. I'm gonna hold on to those now. I've got that ace. I got that ace in my pocket, up my sleeve now, of that Daniel Plainview.
Yeah, you should record an outgoing message.
Lauper nominated. Milkshake drinking fool. Yeah. Oh boy, that is not good for my podcast voice. But yeah, the other one that was significant was after the father recognizes him. He says, "Marco, Cutillo ver vi?" Sure. And that apparently translates to, "What really you?" So thanks, Google Translate. You nailed it on that one. So yeah, let's if anyone out there speaks Esperanto, please give us some translation. I'm sure there's plenty of that on the internet already, but we're lazy.
So I think this brings us to my first point, and my first point is talking about a completely different comic, also by Brian K. Vaughan, which I have been reading recently, called Borders. Is that what it's called? Border? Yeah, maybe Border. I'm double checking to Barrier.
There you go.
Yeah. Clearly I've been reading this. But Barrier, I mean, it's brilliant in a bunch of Brian K. Vaughan ways, but Barrier, it tells a story set on the US-Mexico border, but it's a bilingual story where one character's perspective is in Spanish and the other's is in English. Mm-hmm. And I speak French, but I don't speak a lick of Spanish. And I can follow this story, and I can really, like, I catch a word every now and then, but mostly it's through the art, the panel layout, the expressions, that I'm able to follow this story and figure out what's going on. And that's very much the point. In a foreword, Brian K. Vaughan has even kind of said, this is not meant explicitly for bilingual readers. It's meant so that someone who's fluent in Spanish and doesn't speak any English could read the comic, just like someone who's fluent in English and doesn't speak any Spanish could. And I think that that's a concept that we see in its infancy in this scene. I think this is like we see the way Brian K. Vaughan is playing with language, and at the end of the day, what's brilliant is there's these brilliant prose passages like the one you just highlighted, but at the same time, what really tells the story is, at the end of the day, comics are a visual medium first and a literary medium second, I would say, and in terms of delivering plot, at least. And I think that that's what's really brilliant about this is I don't speak Esperanto. I don't really want to speak Esperanto. There's like a lot more practical languages that I could learn, namely Sindarin. I speak a little bit of Sindarin, but I want to learn no, actually though.
I speak Plainview, actually. That's what I'm fluent in.
But yeah, I think you can tell what's going on in the scene through the looks on their faces, through the body language, through the art. And I think that that's something that's really cool. And I think that's something that if you want to see something more like this, read Borders, because I think this is...
Barrier.
It almost feels to me like this is the kind of idea where the kernel of Borders started to grow in Brian K. Vaughan's mind. Barrier.
There you go.
Yeah, where the kernel of that started to grow in his mind, because
you don't want to suggest we stand on guard.
That's
the bilingual book of his. You snooty Canadian with your accuracy and such.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that someday. We'll have a reading of that. But yeah, I think that's really brilliant, and it shows. I think it also definitely is a testament to Fiona Staples, the way she shows the emotion of the scene without you needing to understand the language, and being able to pick up a couple words here and there is brilliant too, which I think is part of the reason behind the use of Esperanto is it melds a bunch of languages.
Yeah, I mean, even the fact that he's holding up a baby and says "babo."
Yeah.
I'm learning the language.
I also have a bunch of thoughts on the decision to use Esperanto as magic, if we're ready to dive into that.
I could never be more ready, Noah.
So Jonathan, do you know the history of Esperanto?
Oh, you asked the right person. No.
So basically Esperanto was conceptualized as an international language. And it's a really, really kind of optimistic topic. The name even translates to English as one who hopes. Yeah, and so basically in the late 19th century, this dude invented this, but then Esperanto really started to grow throughout the 20th century, as we saw World War I and World War II and all of these kind of oppressive regimes, and as the world became more globalized, the idea was that Esperanto would be this means of kind of bringing the world together with a universal language that fit a bunch of the world's languages together. Of course, this being the turn of the century, it was a bunch of Western Europe's languages together.
Right. Right.
But there's this idea that this would be an international language that we could teach the world, and it was
like
built,
a reverse Tower of Babel sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's super, super interesting to use as the language for your magic system, because I think there's a little bit of, in the magic system, a little bit of, I mean, I'm going on tangent after tangent here, but a lot of people, a lot of our readers will know, and this is where I first discovered it, this magic system from a piece of classic literature known as Aragon, and the inheritance cycle. But the concept of this system, like everything else in Aragon, was lifted directly from better fantasy novels, namely the Earthsea series. And in the Earthsea series, everything has a name, a true name. And when you can learn something's true name, you can have magical control over it.
Oh, so, this is some Play-Doh shit now. Yeah.
So also read A Wizard of Earthsea. Just... I think A Wizard of Earthsea is, I would put that highly in my related reading to Saga. The original Earthsea trilogy especially is, and just anything else in Earthsea. But what I think is really interesting is the concept of in these magics, this magic language is a universal language that everyone has forgotten. This is the default original language for these things. So I think to use Esperanto for magic, whether this was intentional or I'm just reading way into this, is a whole other thing. But I think it's such a brilliant detail that speaks to the concept of universality.
It is, first of all, how dare you actually be insightful and smart on this goddamn nonsense show? We are setting a standard here.
Oh, sorry, dick jokes.
We have 102 of these fucking things left, and now we have to be smart for the rest of them, and I hate it. Second of all, that's fucking fascinating, and I love it.
Yeah. I think it's. I mean, there's a topic for a spin-off video essay in and of itself.
Oh God, you can do that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's super fucking interesting, and yeah, I can totally see. I had not a clue about any of that, so that adds some layers. And I definitely want to keep. I'm kind of disappointed we didn't do it for the first batch, but I definitely want to keep translating what people are saying.
Yeah.
And actually, if anyone knows a site that does that regularly or anything, send us a link, because Google Translate is the dumbest. So yeah, let's go out on a high note and wrap things up. Oh, but first of all, you know what? I want to know what are your thoughts on this arc? What are your thoughts on this arc as a whole?
Are we not gonna talk about spaceships?
Oh, well, we can talk about spaceships. I mean, well, I kind of do want to save that for an in-between, though.
Okay, we can save that for an in-between, I've already been writing the script for a video essay on Saga's ship design in my head.
I mean, if you want to make some fucking money on it, top 10 ships in Saga. Definitive.
I mean, I think it's also worth pointing out before we get to the summary in this scene. Did Isabel fucking die?
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as I can tell, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with yes.
Yes.
It's a very abrupt, and we end on a very, like, an oddly light note, but also our favorite dang character just exploded into blood. So that's a thing. Cliffhangers keep you hanging on till the next episode, or the episode after the next episode, because we got the in-between. But yeah.
So yeah.
R.I.P.
General thoughts on the arc? Like, hook, line, and sinker. The first time I read Saga was I bought. It had been out for a while. I bought the trade back. Like, I bought the whole arc, just the first one, and I went. I brought it home and I read it, and like, pretty much from the moment I sat down, I could not stop reading until I had finished. And the next day, I went back to the comic book shop and bought the next, like, 3 volumes, because that's what was out, or something like that. Like, I was so invested, and I think rereading it, it's the exact same. I'm so invested. I'm so... It's so interesting, because usually what comics kind of have to do is the first arc needs to give you at least some semblance of an arc, right? Of resolution, something, and usually they'll continue, but the first arc is kind of a pilot in a sense, right? Like, your first run ends a story arc, and here I just feel like a story arc is just beginning. I'm just at the beginning of this giant epic, and I'm so ready for more.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I'll like, that's the crazy thing about this last issue, is so much of it, nearly every scene is setting up the next arc, and isn't like, this feels like an epilogue, if anything, with the exception of them finding the
do you mean a prologue?
The rocket ship tree? Huh?
Do you mean a prologue?
No, I'm saying, like, to the arc. Like, I feel like the stalk, stalk dying and stuff feels like a pretty much a climax. Like, they could have very much ended the book there, and I feel like this whole thing is just sort of like we're moving on to the next thing, like a teaser, almost like an end credits thing. For a big chunk of it, because meeting the parents and the whole setting up the thing between
Four and the will
and Robot, and the everyone heading to Quietus and everything, like, it's very much these are our continuing adventures next time. And which I think is really interesting, especially since like, you know, this is the, I was just in the comic shop yesterday, and they have the, you know, bestsellers shelves, and this is number 2. This book is number 2, fucking 7 years later. It's insanity, and it does its job very well. And actually, that's gonna be, I don't know if we're gonna do, we were just starting to talk about it. I don't know if we're gonna do a video essay or a like a between the arcs thing or something, talking about why Saga is so good for getting people into comics and for first time comics readers and stuff like that. But yeah, I think this book is a masterclass in being the most approachable, like appealing to every dang audience type of book. It's brilliant, and I feel like with the choices made, it has to be a conscious decision. The amount of things that they've done specifically to appeal to a large amount of people and non-comics readers and stuff like that has to be orchestrated in some way. So
I think
we'll get into that at some point, but
I think it's really important too, because I think it's important to note that Saga is doing a lot of the legwork to keep a dying industry afloat, and a dying art form, to keep it commercially viable. Because I mean, people will always make comics, but comics are fast dying. I mean, at the time of this, Vertigo was recently shut down, right? And Vertigo made like kind of legitimized non-superhero comics in the modern age. Well, and I just think it's super interesting, because I think Saga is undoubtedly a comic. It is a comic reader's comic, but it also borrows from so many other things to make it such an approachable comic. And I think it's so cool that it can be a comic that like can be the first comic you've ever read, or if you're completely comic literate, you can also really love it. And I think that's part of the brilliance of it.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I went to a seminar last night for comics, specifically children's and young adults comics, and I saw this statistic that overall comic sales are up 11.7% this year, or this past year, and 56.2% rise in kids and teens comics, and then a 7% dip in adult comics, adult graphic novels specifically. And so, like you said, Saga is keeping this afloat, and it's very fascinating to see the things that Saga is borrowing from kids and teens comics that very much need to be applied to adult comics too, but people just refuse to do it, I guess. But that, I think, that's a major part of Saga's success. And again, we'll get real deep into that. But overall, yeah, this is iconic arc. I've read it a dozen times at this point, and it is still just as riveting and entertaining, and sometimes still surprising in a weird way.
Like, I'm still so enthralled to the point that when we click stop recording on this, I might just go read the next issue.
That's almost definitely what I'm gonna do. Okay, so yeah. We're. Do we want to? Oh, what? Well, favorite moment. We gotta do favorite moment.
Oh God, there's so many favorite moments in this, but I mean, the obvious one.
We're gonna have the same one.
The obvious one is the rocket ship splash, right?
Yeah.
But if I can't say that, I will say similar. The rocket ship taking off is magnificent.
Yeah, I used that in the Saga video. It's gorgeous. Yeah, I love that green fire. Again, just a little detail that's slightly off and fascinating, and you don't fully understand it, so your brain fills in whatever the fuck is happening there. But yeah, I mean, I can go with the splash, and I will. It's my favorite of this book. That feels like just purely iconic gorgeousness that is not done enough in comics.
Well, and this is something I love about 2-page splashes. Is so often in comics, 2-page splashes are about conveying a lot of information, but Saga's two-page splashes are super minimalist. They're conveying small amounts of information in a very important way, where it's not like the iconic like Civil War 2-page splash where you get 800 heroes splashing against each other, right? It's about conveying the simple awe of this one thing standing up against a blank landscape.
Yeah.
And wait till we get to... I'm not sure if it's the next, but there's a 2-page splash that... Yeah. No, not next issue, but I mean next 2-page splash.
No,
there's a 2-page splash that is my favorite panel in all of Saga.
I think if it's someone's papa. Are we thinking of someone's papa, or is that something else?
No.
Oh,
We're thinking of someone's baby.
Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say, someone's
papa is pretty fantastic.
Is
too.
my favorite double page splash in anything. But yeah, there's plenty of good splashes coming up. Okay, so question. Do you have a question for this one? I think I'm gonna switch up my question last second here.
I had a thought
for research purposes.
This question was reliant on us talking more about spaceships, which you wouldn't let me. But what does your Saga spaceship?
Hey, Noah?
Yeah.
No, go fuck yourself. I'm gonna shut this down too. You don't even get to ask it.
What does your Saga spaceship look like?
Damn it! I can't even edit it out. I'm too lazy. That's a good question. What's your Saga spaceship look like? And then that's actually good for mine, because mine's super short, and it is just, were you reading a lot of comics before you started reading Saga, or any comics before you started reading Saga? I want to kind of pinpoint how many people were introduced into comics from Saga.
What I would add to that too, as a bit of a
so this is what we're
question
doing now.
is this is what we're doing now.
All right.
is have you read other comics since Saga? Like what's
right?
kind of what are your comic reading habits before and after Saga?
Okay, cool. I will somehow put that into a tweet. And do we want to wrap this thing up? Because we'll have plenty to talk about in the next episode. The next episode is probably going to go even longer than this dumb one, because because you guys have been responding in mass to all of the questions. Oh, and by the way, if you want to respond to those questions,
en masse.
Hey, you know what? You can kiss my mass. I don't care. I don't care enough about making a good joke right now. But if you want to respond to the questions of the week, 2 places you can do it. One is respond to the pinned comment in the video version of this via youtube.com/hornsandwings. Or you can respond to the pinned tweet if you're listening to this the week it came out on the Horns and Wings Twitter, which is just @HornsandWings. So do your stuff there. You can do a thread of tweets in response. It doesn't have to be super short. And yeah, let's next boy, we're getting the next arc, huh? That's going to be a good one.
I'm peeking ahead now, and I'm fired up.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. We're getting a lot of good, juicy flashbacks in that one. We're getting some good origin stories. So come back for that. Come back for the in between the arcs is optional, but we got a lot of good stuff planned for that. And where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube at Watch Polyphonic.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube at Polyphonic.
There you go.
You can find me on Twitter at Watch Polyphonic.
Mm-hmm.
And those are probably the best places to get in touch with me. If you really want to know, you can find my dead Instagram.
Okay.
Oh, I've got a Discord.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say instead of signal boosting your Instagram you haven't used for a year for every episode, maybe do the thing you do use.
Yeah. Should I pull up the link? Can I even do that?
You know what? No,
hit me up on Twitter and ask for a link to my Discord.
We'll put a link to it in the description for this episode too. So if you're watching on YouTube, or we'll even make a tweet about it on the thing.
There's a question of the week. Would you guys be interested?
Stop it.
In a Saga Discord? Would you want a Horns and Wings Discord where we can talk about spaceships? Because Jonathan wouldn't let me talk about them in this episode.
Hey, here's a question of the week. How many questions of the week should we fucking have in one episode? 12? Is 12 the max? What's the cap on this fucking thing? You want to throw any other in there, Noah?
What kind of horns would you have, and what kind of wings would you have if you were a Saga?
They're all going on there. Okay, so there's where you can find him. Go follow his Instagram, please. It's a great one. You can find me at Jonathan Oscar, JOHNATHON OSCAR. Fuck. And you can do youtube.com/MakeStuffStudios. Oh, and if you want to listen to that Between the Arcs episode a week early, so right now, if you're listening on the public channel, go to patreon.com/MakeStuffStudios. If you're a $1 patron, you can listen to every episode a week early, and you're helping us out a bit, so we appreciate it. We're going to be upgrading our audio setup hopefully soon with some Patreon cash, so I'm looking forward to that. And question of the week, we already did that. Leave a review, subscribe. Those are all things people do. Horns and Wings Pod on Instagram is a big hit. Everyone's loving it. And of course, thank you to Fiona Staples, Brian K. Vaughan, Phonographics, and Image Comics for making the best dang comic book in the whole danged galaxy, which I believe is a Lauper nominated book now. So congrats to them.
Nominated.
Yeah. And in response to that, I only have one question. Can you guess what that question is, Noah?
Would it happen to be, am I shitting?
No, it's not, you fucking disgusting monster. Bye.